So this is what's happening right now at the end of February 2026. On one side of the Canada-US border, the loudest political voice in the United States shouting the economy is strong, our strategy is working and the world is falling back in line. But the real numbers tell a very different story. Today we are going to walk through 4 simple realities for you. First, the illusion in the US economy. Second, Canada's unexpected strength. Third, the global shift that's leaving the US behind. And fourth, the political response and the risk. Today's video isn't at all about ideology, it's about math. It's about trade flows, markets, and where confidence is moving right now. And from here in Canada, the view looks completely different than what Americans are being told. Let's start with the contrast between rhetoric and reality. In Washington, the message is confidence, strength, control. But markets don't care about speeches. Markets care about outcomes. US stocks are off to their worst start versus global markets since 1995. That's not an opinion, that's a data-driven fact. You can look it up. According to Goldman Sachs, the S&P 500 is down since the start of the year, while the rest of the world is up sharply. Over the past year, global markets have outperformed US markets threefold. That alone should raise eyebrows. Now add trade. The entire purpose of Trump's illegal global tariff terror was to shrink American trade deficits. Instead, the opposite happened. The US trade gap with Asia widened again. Vietnam, Thailand, Malaysia, all posting record surpluses with the US. China's direct export fell. Yes, but its global surplus hit historic heights. So, what has changed? Trade didn't stop, it rerouted. Meanwhile, economic stability inside the US is wobbling big time. Yes, third quarter growth looked solid. But then the fourth quarter GDP slowed sharply and inflation edged higher than expected. The Federal Reserve's preferred inflation measure, PCE, climbed back to 2.9% in December. That's not victory, that's persistence. That's what happens when an economically illiterate conman pretends to run a country. And the consequences? Well, consumers reacted by spending faster and buying sooner. This pulls demand forward. Saving rates fell and households starting borrowing from the future. Well, that only works once, then it doesn't. And when confidence slips, markets feel it first. Now let's talk about Canada. A year ago, many economists said we would be crushed, that Trump's tariffs would flatten Canadian exports. Canada would be forced to obey. That didn't happen. Instead, Canada outperformed the world. No, I'm not joking. In 2025, Canada's stock market ranked first among the 10 largest global markets by capitalization. First, my friends. First. Investors looked at Canada and they noticed something important. Resilience. Despite declining trade volumes with the US, Canada achieved a trade surplus for the first time since the trade war began. Exports rebounded, imports adjusted, and most important, diversification accelerated. Now that's a confidence booster. And this matters because Canada is more exposed to the US than almost any other country. When we succeed under pressure, it sends a signal, and investors like that. The signal is this: Canada is not trapped. We are building alternatives. New trade bridges to Europe, Asia, and Indo-Pacific. New supply chains with new partners. And that message is working. Now let's zoom out. This story isn't just Canada versus the US. No. It's the world recalibrating. Canada and Europe are reducing their reliance on American defense systems, and governments now moving away from US tech platforms due to security concerns. Large supply chains are being redesigned. Countries are hedging. They see it as their only viable option. Like Carney said in Davos, global trust has collapsed. During the Obama years, nearly two-thirds of the world viewed the US favorably. Today, less than half do. Polling from Gallup and Ipsos shows steep decline across traditional allies. Canada is at a record low. Germany, France, Mexico all went down sharply. For the first time in years, China is viewed more positively than the US in most global surveys. Now that is embarrassing for the US. That is meaningful and consequential. And it's not just the governments. No, citizens have taken measures in their own powerful hands. Canadians aren't crossing the border like they used to. Trips to the US fell more than 25% last year, and air travel dropped again in early 2026. Land crossing plunged. Nexus application collapsed. This isn't because Canadians stopped traveling. No, we just stopped traveling there. Europe is up. Asia is up. Domestic tourism is booming. Our message is strong and firm. And the economic impact adds up. Lost tourism spending, strained border states, big losses in hospitality jobs. US spirits exports to Canada collapsed after provincial boycotts. Californian wine took a major hit. Agriculture followed. Multiply that effect globally. Denmark, Sweden, Germany, France. International buy local movements are everywhere. Consumer boycotts, travel pullbacks. Analysts estimate up to 90 billion in economic losses tied to those boycotts. That pressure doesn't land on politicians, it lands on households. That's the story for US voters. Here's where things turn serious. When Mark Carney said Canada must stand up and stand together against American fascism, the world was listening. From Australia to Europe to Asia, that terrified Washington, because an independent Canada is dangerous. Not military, but economically. And Canada that builds trade corridors without the US, a Canada that signs defense agreements with Europe, a Canada that proves diversification works. That weakens Trump's leverage, and leverage is the only thing he has. So Washington pressure increases, rhetoric escalates, threats return. History tells us where that road leads. Tariffs walls don't create strength. They isolate a country, and we don't just have to look to the 1930s to know it's true. I said it many times before, and I say it again. The future of Trump's USA, it is shrinking in isolation. Why this matters for Canada? Well, for Canadians, this moment is critical. We are doing well, but not by accident. We adapted, and still do. We diversify and stay pragmatic. And we focused on facts, not slogan, not bravado, not fear. Numbers don't lie. Capital always flows where stability exists. It is just an eco-political fact, my friends. Trade is moving where trust remains. Tourism follows respect. And right now, Canada is on the right side of that equation. So here's my question for you. From this side of the border, the story is clear. The world is adjusting. Canada is holding its ground. And the US is facing the consequences for its own choices. But this isn't over. So tell me what you think. Pertaining to the US, what is the next chapter in the Canada-US story? Will Washington change course? Will pressure increase? Or will the divide deepen? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Share this video. Stay engaged. Because the next chapter is being written right now. And Canada has a bigger role in it than anyone expected. Thanks for watching. I'm Wilfried Lemkuller with Europe Curious. See you in the next one.